Chapter 10, Part 1, Shadows and Silhouettes. Moonlight fractured against the crystalline spires of Pyrotus, casting kaleidoscopic patterns across the lower tiers where shadows gathered like conspirators. The walking city's nighttime rhythm had settled into predictable cadence, guard rotations precise to the minute, furnace workers changing shifts with mechanical regularity, surveillance posts manned by increasingly drowsy observers as the midnight hour passed. Thalia pressed herself against the cool stone wall of a narrow maintenance passage, counting her heartbeats as she waited for Elian's signal. Her formal Pyrotus attire had been exchanged for practical garments in muted colors, their dark fabric absorbing what little light penetrated this forgotten corridor. The ceremonial dagger from Aquilon, the only possession her captors had permitted her to retain, rested against her hip, its familiar weight somehow reassuring despite its limited practical value. 3 quick flashes of blue light appeared at the passage's far end. Elian signaled that the next guard rotation had begun, creating their narrow window of opportunity. She moved forward with the practiced grace that years of diplomatic training had instilled, each step placed with deliberate care to avoid any sound that might betray their escape. Elian materialized from the shadows ahead, the silver streak in his hair momentarily catching a stray beam of moonlight before he tilted his head to obscure it once more. His midnight blue eyes held hers briefly, communicating volumes without words. Reassurance, caution, determination, all conveyed in that momentary connection before he turned to lead the way onward. They moved like ghosts through Pyrotus's underbelly, navigating passages that didn't appear on official schematics. Elian's knowledge of the walking city's hidden architecture spoke of previous visits that had involved more than simple message delivery, though Thalia chose not to dwell on what missions might have brought him here before. Such questions belonged to a future with luxury for curiosity, if such a future awaited them at all. At each intersection, each potential exposure, they paused while Elian verified their path remained clear. During one such hesitation, crouched behind massive ventilation ducts that radiated uncomfortable heat, Thalia found her gaze drawn to his profile. The tension in his jaw, the controlled rhythm of his breathing, the absolute focus that transformed his usually guarded features into something almost predatory in its intensity. A memory surfaced unbidden. Their encounter in the market 3 days earlier, when she had attempted to purchase mirage netting without his assistance and nearly revealed her identity to a merchant with raider connections. "I was handling it," she had insisted, pride stinging from his intervention. His reply, "You were announcing your value as a political hostage," had irritated her then, her independent streak rebelling against the suggestion she needed protection. Now, navigating the heart of enemy territory, that same protective instinct she had once resented seemed precious beyond measure. Yet something within her still resisted complete surrender to dependence, still insisted she maintain some semblance of self-sufficiency even here, in circumstances far beyond her experience or training.
3 Velatori guards ahead,
he whispered, his breath warm against her ear as he leaned close.
Standard patrol pattern. When they pass that junction, we'll have 40 seconds to cross the main service corridor.
Thalia nodded, but found herself asking,
Are there alternatives if they deviate from pattern?
Something flickered across his features. Surprise, perhaps, at her tactical question rather than simple acceptance of his plan. The faint curve of his lips suggested approval rather than irritation.
Secondary route through the steam tunnels,
he replied, indicating a maintenance hatch to their left.
Higher risk of detection due to worker presence, but viable if necessary.
The exchange lasted mere seconds, yet Thalia felt something shift between them. A subtle rebalancing, an unspoken acknowledgement that partnership rather than protector and protected better served their shared goal. Before she could examine this adjustment further, Elian gestured towards the approaching patrol, his focus returning to immediate survival. The Bellatori guards passed with military precision, battle trance marks glowing faintly beneath their skin, even in their relaxed state. When they turned the corner, Elian squeezed her hand once, signal to move. They crossed the exposed corridor with swift, silent steps, reaching the opposite passage just as distant footsteps announced another patrol approaching. For nearly an hour, they continued this careful navigation, advancing through maintenance passages, avoiding patrol intersections, descending through service shafts toward Pyrotus's lowest tier. The walking city's massive furnace complex loomed to their right, its heat causing perspiration to gather at Thalia's temples, despite the night's natural chill. To their left, the beast carrier's massive limbs occasionally shifted, subtle tremors running through the entire structure as the creature adjusted its enormous weight while resting. Finally, they reached their destination, the holding pens where transport animals were kept while not in active service. Unlike Aquilon's organized stables, these enclosures suggested utility without comfort, each pen containing just enough space for its occupant to stand or lie down, with minimal consideration beyond basic survival needs. Elian paused at the entrance, scanning the dim interior with predatory intensity before gesturing her forward. Within, rows of sand lions slumbered in various positions, their scaled flanks rising and falling with deep, rhythmic breaths. At the far end, separated from the others, two familiar silhouettes caused Thalia's heart to leap with unexpected joy, Sirocco and the blood-scaled sand lion they had stolen during their previous escape.
They kept them together,
he observed, satisfied confirmation in his rough-edged voice.
Sand lions form pack bonds quickly. Breaking those attachments impairs performance.
They moved carefully between the sleeping beasts, avoiding sudden movements that might startle creatures capable of disemboweling humans with casual swipes of massive claws. Sirocco raised his head as they approached, a soft trill of recognition vibrating from his throat. The sand lion beside him, now clearly female upon closer inspection, watched them with greater wariness, her amber eyes reflecting the minimal light with predatory assessment. Elian approached the female sand lion directly, maintaining eye contact while extending one hand, palm up. The beast sniffed cautiously, nostrils flaring as she processed his scent.
She remembers us,
he murmured, satisfaction evident in his tone as the creature pushed her massive head against his outstretched palm.
Good. That simplifies matters.
With practiced efficiency, they prepared the mounts for departure, adjusting harnesses, securing minimal supplies that Elian had apparently cached in advance, checking the animals for any injuries that might impair their performance. Throughout these preparations, they maintained near silence, communicating through gestures and occasional whispered words when absolutely necessary. As Thalia adjusted Sirocco's saddle straps, she found herself studying Elian's movements with the same analytical attention she had once applied to diplomatic adversaries across negotiation tables. The fluid grace with which he handled equipment spoke of long familiarity with desert travel. The careful way he checked each buckle twice revealed perfectionism, born of having survived situations where overlooked details proved fatal. The occasional glance he cast toward the entrance, always at precise 30-second intervals, demonstrated tactical awareness that transcended mere caution. Pieces of him continued assembling in her mind. Courier, survivor, protector, dreamwalker. Yet something essential remained elusive. Some core truth about Elian Norwood that she couldn't quite grasp, despite their shared intimacy in the dreamer's oasis. The silver streak in his hair caught the minimal light as he worked. That visible mark of his mixed heritage, a reminder of how little she truly understood about the man who had risked everything to save her. She found herself wondering what he saw when he looked at her. Diplomatic asset, responsibility, lover, or something else entirely. The uncertainty created strange discomfort behind her breastbone, a feeling she hadn't experienced since childhood performances before her father's council, when she had never felt quite enough, despite perfect recitation of assigned material.
Ready?
His question drew her from introspection, his midnight blue eyes studying her with that unsettling perception that seemed to read beyond her carefully maintained composure. Thalia nodded, swinging onto Sirocco's back with more confidence than she had possessed during their earlier journey. The strider shifted beneath her, adjusting to her weight with familiar acceptance that somehow steadied her despite the danger surrounding them. Elian mounted the female sand lion, gathering the reins with practiced efficiency. He leaned forward, murmuring something directly into the creature's ear that caused her to lower into stalking posture, muscles coiled with potential energy.
Follow exactly,
he instructed, voice barely audible even in the quiet holding pen.
No deviation, no hesitation. We'll have one chance to clear the western gate before alarm systems activate.
With that final warning, he nudged the sand lion forward. The beast moved with surprising stealth despite her size, each six-legged step placed with predatory precision. Sirocco followed without prompting, maintaining perfect distance behind the larger mount as they slipped from the holding pen into Pyrotus's lowest tier. The final phase of their escape required navigating Pyrotus's western gate, a massive structure of interlocking metal panels reinforced with both physical barriers and magical wards. As they approached from the shadows of a maintenance tunnel, Elian signaled for Thalia to halt. They crouched behind stacked supply crates, observing the gate operations from their concealed position. Despite the late hour, a steady trickle of traffic continued through the checkpoint. Merchants returning from outlying encampments, laborers finishing extended shifts at the external refineries, cargo handlers guiding heavily laden beasts of burden carrying raw materials for the furnaces, workers going out into the desert to harvest what little was to be found.
Night traffic,
he whispered, midnight blue eyes assessing each passing group with tactical precision.
We might blend with the refinery workers heading to the western extraction sites.
Thalia studied the individuals passing through the gate. Their dust-covered clothing, the weary slump of their shoulders, the way guards performed perfunctory inspections before waving them through. Her diplomatic training and observation provided unexpected value in this moment of necessity.
Second group from the left,
she murmured, indicating a collection of laborers leading 3 sand striders laden with equipment.
Their formation has gaps we could slip into. The guards seem less attentive to their particular section.
Appreciation flickered across Elian's features. Not surprise, but confirmation of something he had perhaps already recognized in her.
Good eye,
he acknowledged.
When they pass this junction, we'll fall in behind the third strider. Keep your hood up, head down, and follow my lead.
They waited in tense silence, muscles coiled with readiness as the laborers approached their position. When the group passed the junction Elian had indicated, they emerged from hiding with careful timing that made their appearance seem natural continuation of the existing procession rather than new addition. No heads turned at their emergence. No alarm sounded at their presence. They joined the slow-moving traffic with the appearance of belonging, just 2 more dust-covered travelers returning from desert labor. Thalia kept her posture deliberately weary, mimicking the exhaustion evident in those surrounding them. Elian adopted a worker's slouched gait that somehow disguised his usual predatory grace. The gate loomed before them, its massive structure illuminated by flame crystals that cast harsh light across the checkpoint. Bellatory guards conducted inspections with mechanical efficiency, their enhanced sensors typically capable of detecting unauthorized passages or forged documentation with ease. Thalia's heartbeat accelerated as they approached, yet she maintained outward calm with the discipline instilled through years of diplomatic negotiation. Beside her, Elian's expression remained carefully neutral, though his hand had drifted closer to the silver knife concealed beneath his cloak. The guards passed over their group with cursory attention, eyes scanning the laborers without particular interest. One guard, a heavily muscled Bellatori with intricate battle trance marks visible even in their dormant state, paused momentarily when his gaze passed over their position, a slight narrowing of his enhanced eyes suggesting potential recognition. Thalia's breath caught, diplomacy providing no protocol for imminent discovery during escape from foreign power. Beside her, Elian tensed almost imperceptibly, weight shifting to the balls of his feet in preparation for whatever might become necessary. Then, inexplicably, the guard's attention moved onward, dismissing them as unworthy of further scrutiny. The group continued through the gate without challenge, passing beneath the looming structure that separated Pyrotus from the endless desert beyond. Only when they had traveled several hundred yards beyond the city's immediate perimeter did Elian guide their mounts away from the laborers' procession, gradually increasing distance until they could separate entirely without drawing attention. The beasts accelerated to ground-eating pace once clear of the traffic, carrying them swiftly into the open desert. When several miles separated them from Pyrotus's imposing silhouette, Elian finally signaled to slow their mounts, bringing them to halt atop a dune that offered clear sightlines in all directions. Moonlight bathed the endless desert in silver, transforming the harsh landscape into something almost ethereal.
That was too easy,
he stated, voice pitched low, despite the distance they had traveled. His expression had hardened, midnight blue eyes scanning their back trail with predatory intensity. Only when several miles separated them from the walking city's imposing silhouette did Elian signal to slow their mounts, bringing them to halt atop a dune that offered clear sightlines in all directions. Moonlight bathed the endless desert in silver, transforming the harsh landscape into something almost ethereal. Against this backdrop, Pyrotus glowed orange-red, its perpetual flames visible even at this distance, marking civilization against wilderness with defiant brilliance. Thalia studied the distant city.
A trap?
She suggested. The question more confirmation of shared suspicion than request for clarification.
Almost certainly,
he agreed, the silver streak in his hair catching moonlight as he turned toward her.
But why allow our escape only to recapture us? What purpose does that serve?
Thalia's mind worked through scenarios with practiced precision. Her father had taught her to analyze opponents by understanding their objectives rather than merely their actions, to see 3 moves beyond the immediate maneuver.
Perhaps the perception of escape serves Cormac's purpose better than captivity,
she reasoned, the realization settling cold in her stomach.
What if detention wasn't his true objective?
Tracking,
he concluded, following her thought to its logical end.
He wants to follow us somewhere, but where?
The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither fully understood, yet both instinctively feared.
The ancient prison,
she whispered, the wellspring visions resurfacing with crystal clarity.
Together they break, or together they seal. What if Cormac needs us to lead him to the prison's location?
Elian's expression darkened, his fingers tightening on the sand lion's reins until the beast shifted uneasily beneath him.
Then we've been maneuvered into becoming his guides,
he acknowledged, frustration evident in the rough edge that entered his voice.
But to where? I don't know the prison's location. Do you?
Thalia shook her head, violet blue eyes reflecting moonlight as she considered their limited options.
Not consciously,
she admitted.
But the wellspring showed me fragments. Crystal caverns beneath the sand, 9 structures arranged in perfect geometric formation. If those visions contain actual location markers rather than merely symbolic representation,
then your blood might guide you there without conscious knowledge,
he finished for her, understanding dawning in his expression.
And my Dreamwalker heritage might do the same. 2 halves of a map neither of us can fully read alone.
The implication settled between them. They had escaped physical captivity, only to find themselves potentially ensnared in something more insidious, their very natures possibly compelling them toward a destination Cormac sought without their conscious cooperation.
We need distance,
he decided, scanning the horizon with renewed determination.
Direction doesn't matter for now, just separation from potential pursuit. Once we've established sufficient lead, we can determine next steps.
He nudged the sand lion forward, setting course across the dunes at angle that appeared random, but Thalia suspected contained tactical consideration beyond her understanding. Sirocco followed, maintaining perfect formation behind the larger beast, despite their differing natural gaits. As they traveled through the moonlit desert, Thalia found herself studying Elian's back. The straight spine, the watchful tension in his shoulders, the silver streak in his hair that caught starlight with unnatural gleam. Trust had never come easily to her, diplomatic training having taught caution above all else. Yet here she followed him without question, her life and perhaps the world's fate entrusted to a man who remained partially mystery despite their shared dreams and bodies. The contradiction created strange pressure behind her breastbone. Not quite fear, not quite doubt, but something adjacent to both that she couldn't properly name. She was Thalia Maravan, daughter of the Fathermark, trained in diplomacy since childhood. She analyzed, she calculated, she maintained control through understanding. Yet with Elian, some essential analysis remained incomplete, some critical understanding just beyond her grasp. Did that uncertainty reflect her inability to fully trust, or his fundamental unknowability? The question circled her thoughts like sandhawk seeking prey, finding no resolution as they continued their desert flight beneath triple moons and ancient stars. Atop the highest tower of the Crucible Palace, Cormac Aurelius stood alone, perfect form silhouetted against the endless night sky. His gold-flecked eyes tracked the minute disturbance on the distant horizon. Two small figures moving with purposeful haste away from Pyrotus's domain. A smile touched his perfect lips, satisfaction evident in the subtle relaxation of his perpetually controlled features. The heavy door behind him opened without sound, testimony to the precision engineering that characterized all aspects of his domain. He did not turn, having anticipated the interruption with the same calculation that marked his every action. Boots struck polished stone in measured rhythm, military cadence executed with feminine grace. The steps halted at precisely the appropriate distance for a subordinate awaiting acknowledgement, neither presumptuous in their proximity nor disrespectful in their reluctance.
My lord.
A voice cut through the night air, contralto tones carrying both strength and underlying melody that distinguished it from ordinary military address. Cormac turned unhurriedly, allowing his visitor full appreciation of his perfect profile against the star-strewn backdrop before bringing his full attention to bear upon her. The Bellatori captain stood at formal attention, her battle trance marks forming intricate patterns visible even beneath her formal armor. Unlike the brutish warriors that comprised most of the enhanced military force, Captain Dahlia represented the epitome of Bellatori feminine ideal, statuesque yet lithe, powerful yet graceful. Her features suggested classical sculpture brought to life. High cheekbones beneath skin, burnished to bronze by desert sun, lips full yet firm, eyes the color of tiger's eye stone, deep amber streaked with gold. Midnight black hair had been drawn back in elaborate warrior's braids that emphasized her strong jawline while revealing a neck whose elegant length belied the strength hidden within its corded muscles. Even her armor differed from standard military issue, each plate contoured to accommodate feminine curves without sacrificing practical protection. The metal itself, some alloy unique to Pyrotus forges, gleamed with subtle fire caught within its surface, as though the very material recognized the warrior spirit of its wearer.
"The guests have escaped, my lord,"
she reported, voice betraying no emotion despite the significance of her words.
"I have a wing ready to track them."
Cormac's perfect eyebrow arched with apparent surprise, the expression so precisely calibrated it might have been rehearsed before mirror.
"A wing?"
he inquired, perfect voice carrying harmonics that vibrated through the air between them.
"Who gave such orders, Captain Dahlia?"
The question hung between them, weighted with implied criticism that transformed the Bellatori captain's confident posture into sudden rigidity. Her battle trance marks dimmed slightly, uncertainty replacing military assurance in her tiger eye gaze. She dropped to one knee with fluid grace that somehow maintained dignity despite its supplication, right fist pressed against her breastplate directly over her heart.
"Forgive me, my lord,"
she replied, her voice steady despite the obvious tension in her powerful frame.
"I presumed too much. After the order to dismiss critical guard posts, I assumed you wished for an escape. I assumed you would want to follow."
For a moment, Cormac simply observed her, this perfect specimen of enhanced humanity kneeling before him, her strength and beauty momentarily heightened rather than diminished by her submissive posture. Then laughter escaped him, genuine amusement rather than the calculated response he typically allowed others to witness.
"Stand, Captain,"
he commanded, the harmonics in his voice gentling from authority to something adjacent to approval.
"Your initiative interests me."
She rose with that same fluid grace that characterized her every movement, tiger-eye gaze remaining respectfully lowered despite her restored position.
"Tell me,"
he continued, moving closer with deliberate steps that managed to project both casual interest and predatory assessment simultaneously.
"what else did you deduce from my orders?"
Captain Dahlia straightened, professionalism reasserting itself despite her momentary uncertainty.
"That you wished them to believe their escape was their own idea.
She replied, confidence returning to her contralto voice.
That you required them free yet observed. That something beyond mere captivity served your purpose."
Cormac circled her with slow, measured steps, a sovereign evaluating property with potential beyond its apparent function. His gold-flecked eyes tracked the subtle ways her body responded to his proximity. The minute acceleration of pulse visible at her throat, the almost imperceptible shift in breathing pattern, the faint brightening of battle trance marks that betrayed heightened awareness despite her military composure.
"How long have you served in my elite guard, Captain Dahlia?"
he inquired, the question seemingly casual despite the intense focus with which he observed her response.
7 years, 3 months, my lord.
She answered without hesitation.
Promoted to captain 2 years ago after the Southern Territories campaign.
7 years,
he repeated, perfect features arranging themselves into an expression of thoughtful consideration.
"How curious that I've overlooked such a valuable asset in such proximity all this time."
His perfect fingers reached out to trace the intricate battle trance mark that curved along her jawline, the touch neither entirely professional nor overtly intimate, existing in calculated territory between appropriate assessment and deliberate seduction.
"I admire many things in a woman, Captain,"
he continued, his harmonically resonant voice dropping to register that seemed to vibrate directly through her enhanced form.
"Beauty, intelligence, devotion, loyalty. All qualities you clearly possess in abundance."
His hand moved from her jawline to brush against the warrior braids that constrained her midnight hair, the gesture containing a clear question despite no words being spoken.
My lord?
Uncertainty colored her voice, though whether from confusion or anticipation remained unclear.
"Your tactical assessment proved correct,"
he observed, continuing his slow circuit around her statuesque form.
Your initiative anticipated my intentions with remarkable precision. Such synchronicity deserves recognition.
He completed his circle, coming to stand directly before her with perfect stillness that somehow projected more power than any overt display of dominance could have achieved.
I've collected many exceptional women during my governance,
he stated, gold flecks swirling in his amber eyes as they captured and held her gaze.
Scholars, artists, engineers, each bringing unique perspective to my inner circle. Yet I find myself, without a military mind, among my personal advisors, an oversight that now appears significant.
His perfect hand rose once more, this time boldly cupping her face in gesture that could not be misinterpreted as mere professional assessment.
But I have not collected a woman who so readily anticipates my needs before I voice them,
he continued, harmonics in his voice intensifying until they seemed to vibrate directly through her enhanced body.
Come, let me reward you for your devoted service.
Without awaiting response, he turned toward the tower entrance, perfect confidence in her compliance evident in every line of his posture. Captain Dahlia hesitated only momentarily before following, her tiger-eye gaze revealing complex emotions beneath her military discipline, ambition, pride, desire, and something darker that might have been fear had it appeared in lesser woman. As the heavy door closed behind them, the night sky witnessed their departure, with the same indifferent brilliance it had shown to countless human dramas enacted beneath its eternal watch. In the distance, two small figures continued their apparent escape across moonlit dunes, unaware they moved precisely according to design rather than against it. The ancient stars continued their slow rotation above the endless desert, watching mortal plans unfold with the patient observation of entities that had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations. Somewhere beneath those indifferent stars, an ancient prison waited, its crystalline walls weakening after centuries of containment, its occupants stirring with renewed awareness after generations of dormancy. And moving toward this nexus of power, whether by choice or manipulation remained unclear, traveled the blood of the Plague Maker and the heart of the Dream Child, their paths converging toward destiny neither fully understood, yet both increasingly accepted as inevitable. Chapter 10, Part 2, The Dreamplague Workshop. Dawn painted the desert in watercolor hues of amber and rose. The night's chill lingered in the air, crystallizing their breath into ephemeral clouds that dissolved moments after formation. Thalia stood atop a wind-carved ridge, surveying the endless expanse of sand stretching toward distant mountains that shimmered like mirages on the horizon. She traced her finger along the crudely drawn map they had pieced together from memories and Verica's carelessly revealed information. The Alabaster Mountains loomed ahead, their white peaks cutting through morning mist like ancient sentinels guarding forgotten secrets.
We should go to the workshop first,
she said, turning to find Elian watching her with that unsettling intensity that seemed to see beyond her carefully maintained composure.
My ancestors' research might provide answers Cormac deliberately withheld.
The silver streak in his hair caught the early light as he considered her proposal. Midnight blue eyes narrowed against the rising sun. She had expected argument, tactical objections based on risk assessment and optimal escape routes. Instead, his expression softened into something adjacent to admiration.
Logical,
he agreed, moving to stand beside her with that fluid grace that made even simple actions appear choreographed.
If the prison weakens as Cormac claims, understanding the original Dreamplague formula becomes essential, either to strengthen its bonds or control its dissolution.
He traced the proposed route with calloused fingertip, their hands briefly touching. The contact sent that now familiar warmth spiraling through her, a connection that transcended physical proximity to resonate on levels she still couldn't properly name.
3 days' journey at steady pace,
He calculated, already mentally cataloging resources and potential hazards.
The mountains harbored raider encampments last season, though the Guardian Verica mentioned may have altered territorial boundaries.
He turned to face her directly, midnight blue eyes searching her violet blue with quiet intensity.
This isn't escape.
He stated, the words carrying no judgment despite their implied criticism.
This is engagement.
Thalia held his gaze.
Some conflicts can't be outrun.
She replied, the admission more personal than she had intended.
What the wellspring showed me, the choice approaching, requires information I don't yet possess. My ancestors' workshop might contain answers Cormac would prefer we never discover.
Something shifted in Elian's expression. Respect mingled with concern.
Then we go forward.
He decided, the silver streak in his hair catching sunlight as he nodded once, decision crystallizing into action.
But cautiously. Abandoned sites tend harbor dangers in the sands.
They broke camp with practiced efficiency that spoke of growing partnership, each anticipating the other's needs without unnecessary discussion. Thalia found herself watching Elian's movements with new awareness. The precise way he secured packs to the mounts, the methodical checking of provisions, the constant awareness of surroundings that somehow never appeared paranoid despite its intensity. As the journey unfolded across 3 days of desert travel, the boundary between teacher and student began dissolving into something more balanced. Elian still possessed greater desert knowledge, yet increasingly acknowledged Thalia's rapid adaptations. During their second evening, as they sheltered beneath a massive rock formation that provided natural windbreak against approaching sandstorm, Elian demonstrated how to locate water hidden beneath seemingly barren terrain.
The desert conceals more than it reveals,
He explained, indicating subtle discolorations in the sand that suggested moisture beneath.
Most travelers see only emptiness because they've never learned to recognize abundance wearing different forms.
He knelt, digging through coarse sand until reaching darker material beneath. With practiced motions, he created a shallow depression, then placed a crystal collection device atop it.
Wait,
He instructed, settling back on his heels with the patience of someone accustomed to desert rhythms.
water vapor rises through soil layers during temperature shifts. The crystal condenses it back to liquid.
Thalia studied both the device and its owner with equal curiosity. In the dying light, his features appeared softer. The habitual vigilance momentarily relaxed into something approaching contentment.
Where did you learn such techniques?
She asked. Something flickered across his expression. Hesitation, perhaps, or calculation regarding how much personal history to reveal.
My mother,
He answered finally, the silver streak in his hair catching the firelight as he adjusted position.
she lived among desert nomads before settling in Aquilon's territories. Taught me their survival methods alongside courier routes and navigation techniques.
And your father?
The question emerged without thought. Elian's midnight blue eyes reflected firelight as he studied her face, assessing the motives behind her inquiry with that unsettling perception that seemed to read beyond her carefully maintained expressions.
Present only in dreams.
He replied, voice carrying that rough edge that emerged when emotions pressed against his usual control.
Until recently, I thought him merely a myth my mother created to explain my differences.
His fingers rose unconsciously to touch the silver streak in his hair, that visible mark of heritage.
Now I understand. He was bound by nature rather than choice. Dreamwalkers exist partially outside conventional reality. Their ability to manifest physically requires tremendous effort or special conditions.
The revelation hung between them. Not merely information shared, but trust extended. Thalia recognized the weight of this offering, the deliberate lowering of a defensive barriers maintained throughout his life.
My mother died when I was 4.
She offered in return.
I remember little beyond her singing and the scent of water lilies. My father rarely speaks of her, though her portrait hangs in his private chambers.
She hadn't intended to share this particular vulnerability, yet something about their circumstances, seated beside a small fire beneath ancient stone, while Sandstorm howled beyond their shelter, invited her honesty. Elian nodded, understanding passing between them without requiring additional words. The crystal collection device had begun accumulating droplets of water, the liquid catching firelight as it gathered into a small reservoir.
Secrets run in both our bloodlines,
he observed, voice pitched low beneath the storm's ambient wailing.
Perhaps that's why the wellspring connected us. Hidden truths, recognizing their counterparts across distance and circumstance.
Something about this assessment resonated deeply within Thalia's chest, recognition that transcended rational explanation. Meeting Elian's midnight blue eyes across the small fire, she felt that now familiar current flowing between them. The connection that had manifested first in dreams, now strengthening in waking reality with each barrier lowered, each vulnerability shared. By their third day of travel, the Alabaster Mountains dominated the horizon, a massive formations of white stone that seemed to absorb and reflect sunlight with equal intensity. Their destination lay nestled within those ancient peaks, concealed from casual observation by natural barriers and deliberate design. A narrow canyon provided access to the workshop's location, its walls rising hundreds of feet on either side to create a shadowed passage that felt simultaneously claustrophobic and exposed. Their voices echoed strangely against the stone, transforming ordinary conversation into disjointed fragments that returned distorted and incomplete. Thalia felt it first, the sensation of being observed with predatory intensity despite no visible presence. The subtle feeling prickled warning along her spine, causing her to straighten instinctively in Sirocco's saddle.
We're being watched,
she murmured, voice barely audible above the canyon's ambient sounds. Elian nodded, midnight blue eyes scanning their surroundings. The silver streak in his hair seemed momentarily brighter, as though responding to unseen energies permeating the canyon.
The Guardian Verica mentioned,
he confirmed, hand drifting toward the silver knife at his belt.
Its presence feels distributed, not centralized like ordinary awareness.
Despite the warning sensation, no attack materialized as they continued deeper into the canyon. The watching presence maintained distance, observing without intervening as they navigated increasingly narrow passages toward their destination. The workshop entrance appeared without warning, a massive door carved directly into white stone, its surface inscribed with mathematical formulae and alchemical symbols that seemed to shift slightly when viewed from different angles. The entrance stood partially open, one massive panel tilted outward as though whoever had last departed had lacked either time or inclination to secure it properly. They dismounted some distance away, securing their beasts to natural stone formations that provided both shade and protection from the worst of the desert wind. The animals displayed obvious unease, Sirocco's long neck swiveling constantly to track unseen movement, while the sand lion's scales rippled with agitation.
They sense it,
he observed, checking his weapons with methodical precision.
Whatever watches us spooks them.
Thalia nodded, adjusting her own dagger while scanning their surroundings with heightened awareness. The diplomatic dagger at her hip seemed woefully inadequate against whatever entity had apparently destroyed elite Bellatori warriors with casual ease.
We could leave,
she acknowledged, voice steady despite the fear churning beneath her composed exterior.
Seek information elsewhere.
Elian's midnight blue eyes held hers, the connection between them humming with unspoken understanding.
We could,
he agreed, no judgment coloring his tone.
What does your instinct suggest?
The question surprised her, not because he sought her opinion, which had become increasingly common during their journey, but because he referenced instinct. She closed her eyes briefly. The sensation of being watched intensified, yet beneath that discomfort lay something adjacent to recognition, as though whatever observed them possessed some connection to her.
We need to enter,
she decided, opening her eyes to find Elian watching her, with that unsettling perception that seemed to witness thoughts forming before she articulated them.
The workshop contains information essential to understanding our options. Without it, we remain reactive rather than proactive.
Approval flickered across his features.
Very well,
he stated simply, offering his hand. Thalia took it without hesitation, their fingers intertwining with natural ease that still surprised her despite its increasing familiarity. Together they approached the massive door, the sensation of being watched intensifying with each step until it pressed against their awareness like physical weight. The workshop interior lay in shadow beyond the partially open entrance, darkness seeming to gather with unusual density. Elian produced a small crystal illuminator from his pack, the device emitting a soft blue glow that created more shadow than clarity as they stepped across the threshold. Ancient dust swirled around their boots, disturbed for the first time in months since Cormac's expedition had retrieved whatever artifacts they had deemed valuable. The air carried a strange metallic undertone beneath a mustiness, the scent somehow familiar, despite Thalia having no conscious memory of encountering it before. The entry chamber opened into a vast space whose boundaries extended beyond their limited illumination. Massive workbenches lined walls of polished white stone, their surfaces cluttered with alchemical equipment preserved through centuries by whatever spells had been cast during the workshop's creation.
Remarkable,
He murmured.
These preservation enchantments still function despite centuries of abandonment. Your ancestor possessed formidable magical talents.
Thalia nodded, violet blue eyes wide as she absorbed the workshop's scale and complexity. Something about this space resonated within her blood, recognition that transcended conscious knowledge, a connection to the woman who had created both this sanctuary and the Dreamplague that had altered civilization's course.
It feels...
She hesitated, searching for words that might capture the strange familiarity permeating her awareness.
like returning rather than discovering, as though some part of me has been here before.
Elian studied her with increased intensity, the silver streak in his hair catching their illuminator's light as he tilted his head slightly.
Blood memory?
He suggested, voice pitched low as though sharing secret rarely acknowledged.
My father's people believe certain spaces carry impressions that resonate through bloodlines.
The explanation should have seemed mystical nonsense, yet it aligned too perfectly with her experience to dismiss. She moved deeper into the workshop with increasing confidence, her steps guided by intuition rather than rational thought. Massive crystal columns created natural divisions within the space, their surfaces etched with formulae and theoretical notations that would require weeks to properly study. Glassware and alchemical implements remained positioned as though their owner had merely stepped away momentarily rather than abandoned them centuries earlier. The watching presence followed their exploration, its attention shifting focus as they moved through different sections of the workshop. The sensation remained unsettling, yet grew almost familiar through continued exposure, like persistent sound eventually fading from active awareness into the background. Near the workshop's center, Thalia discovered what appeared to be personal quarters, a smaller chamber containing a desk, sleeping alcove, and walls lined with journal shelves. Unlike the main laboratory space, this area showed evidence of recent disturbance. Empty spaces marked removed volumes, dust patterns indicated examined and discarded materials, footprints revealed previous visitors' movements.
Cormac's people took much,
She observed, fingers tracing empty shelf spaces with strange possessiveness she hadn't anticipated.
yet significant material remains.
She examined the remaining journals with methodical precision, violet blue eyes scanning titles and notations with increasing excitement. 3 volumes in particular drew her attention. Leather-bound books whose spines bore her ancestors' personal mark, rather than mere cataloging symbols.
These are personal journals rather than research notes.
She explained, carefully removing them from their resting places.
Cormac's scholars might have overlooked their significance if focused solely on the formula components.
Elian moved to examine a different section of the chamber, midnight blue eyes narrowing as he studied a strange device positioned near the desk. The apparatus resembled nothing he had seen before. Crystal components arranged in strange configurations, and metallic elements fabricated from materials without obvious modern equivalents.
Strange.
He murmured, careful not to touch the device despite obvious curiosity.
Not alchemical like most equipment here.
Thalia joined him. The journals clutched protectively against her chest as she examined the strange apparatus. Recognition flickered at her awareness's edges. Not conscious knowledge, but that same blood memory that had guided her movements since entering the workshop.
It's a resonator,
She said, certainty entering her voice, despite having no rational source for this identification.
something designed to amplify and direct specific frequencies between physical reality and the dreamscape.
Even as she spoke, Thalia recognized the impossibility of possessing such specific knowledge. Yet the information flowed through her with absolute conviction, as though directly accessing memories that predated her birth.
Take it,
He decided, already moving to pack the device with careful efficiency.
along with the journals. Whatever purpose it served originally, it may prove valuable in understanding our options regarding the weakening prison.
The watching presence intensified suddenly, pressing against their awareness with unmistakable displeasure. The workshop's temperature dropped noticeably, their breath crystallizing into visible clouds despite the desert heat outside. Shadows gathered with unnatural density in the chamber's corners, coalescing into a substance that seemed simultaneously liquid and solid.
We've triggered something.
He observed, voice steady despite the obvious danger materializing around them. The silver knife appeared in his hand without conscious movement, its blade gleaming with subtle luminescence.
The guardian objects to the removal of the workshop's contents.
Thalia clutched the journals tighter, diplomatic training assessing limited options with rapid precision. The resonator device lay partially disassembled in Elian's pack, its crystal components carefully wrapped in protective cloth to prevent damage during transport.
Communication might be possible.
She suggested.
Perhaps.
The shadow struck without warning, coalescing into massive form that moved with impossible speed. Darkness solidified into claws that extended towards the journals clutched against Thalia's chest, the entity's intention unmistakable despite its lack of conventional features. Elian intercepted the attack with inhuman quickness, the silver knife flashing through shadow substance with precision that would have severed ordinary flesh. The blade passed through the entity with minimal effect, though its passage left brief luminescent trail that seemed to cause the shadow momentary discomfort.
Run!
He commanded, positioning himself between Thalia and the materializing guardian.
Get to the entrance. I'll follow.
Instead of obeying, Thalia retreated only far enough to secure the journals in her pack.
Guardian.
She addressed the entity directly, voice carrying a formal cadence used for highest-level negotiations.
We seek knowledge rather than theft.
The shadow paused, its form wavering between solidity and vapor as though considering her words. Then it struck again, not toward her, but at Elian, who stood with silver knife ready despite its demonstrated ineffectiveness. The collision sent him flying across the chamber with terrible force, his body impacting a stone wall with a sickening crack before sliding to floor in a crumpled heap. The silver knife skittered across stone, its blade dimming as the connection with its wielder severed.
Elian.
His name tore from her throat with raw emotion that shattered into genuine fear. She moved toward him without conscious thought. The shadow materialized between them with impossible speed, its form solidifying into a vaguely humanoid shape, though details remained obscured by its fundamental darkness. One moment Thalia stood 5 paces from her fallen protector. The next, a cold shadow substance wrapped around her waist with surprising strength, lifting her from ground with casual ease. She struggled against its grip. Her hands passed through shadow substance without finding purchase, her efforts to break free proving as ineffective as Elian's weapon had been against the entity's fundamental nature. With measured deliberation, the Guardian carried her deeper into the workshop, away from both entrance and Elian's motionless form. Shadow limbs maintained a careful yet unbreakable hold, keeping her suspended as they moved through passages her limited exploration hadn't revealed. As diplomatic training reasserted itself through her initial panic, Thalia realized the entity displayed surprising care despite its obvious strength. The grip around her waist remained firm, yet avoided excessive pressure, its movements steadied despite her continued struggles. Whatever the Guardian's purpose in separating her from Elian, immediate destruction did not appear to be its objective. They passed through a series of increasingly narrow corridors, ancient alchemical equipment giving way to more cryptic artifacts whose purposes defied immediate identification. The deeper sections appeared untouched by Cormac's expedition, preservation enchantments maintaining a pristine condition despite centuries of abandonment. Finally, the passage opened into a circular chamber, whose architecture differed significantly from previous sections. Where the main workshop featured a practical design focused on research function, this space suggested a ceremonial purpose. The walls curved upward to form a domed ceiling, inscribed with astronomical patterns resembling star maps, though constellations depicted matched no configurations known to Thalia. At the chamber's center stood a crystal platform, carved from single massive stone, its surface etched with complex patterns that glowed with subtle luminescence. The Guardian carried Thalia directly to this central feature, shadow limbs depositing her atop the platform with unexpected gentleness before withdrawing to chamber's perimeter.
Guardian,
She began, keeping her voice steady despite the fear still coursing through her system.
I am Thalia Maravin, descendant of...
The chamber responded before she could complete her introduction. Crystal platform beneath her feet, flaring with sudden brilliance that momentarily blinded her with its intensity. When her vision cleared, the Guardian had vanished. Its shadow substance dissipated like mist before the desert sun. In its place stood a translucent figure that shimmered between solidity and transparency. A woman whose features reflected Thalia's own with unsettling similarity, despite centuries separating their existences. Violet blue eyes identical to her own studied her with analytical precision, assessing bloodline connection with scientific rather than emotional interest.
Blood of my blood.
The apparition stated, a voice carrying harmonic qualities, reminiscent of sorcerer's speech, yet distinctly human beneath those overtones.
The vessel returns to source. The cycle approaches completion.
Understanding crashed through Thalia's awareness with devastating clarity. The Guardian wasn't a separate entity, but an extension of her ancestors' continuing presence. Before she could properly process this revelation, the crystal platform beneath her feet activated fully, energy surging through ancient circuits with intensity that overwhelmed her consciousness. As darkness claimed her awareness, one thought remained crystalline in its clarity. Elian. I need to reach Elian. But the thought dissipated into the void as ancient magic designed centuries before her birth pulled her deeper into a connection with the woman who had created both Dreamplague and its potential antidote. The ancestor whose choices now shaped the destiny unfolding around her like an elaborate tapestry woven from blood, dream, and prophecy's inexorable threads.